Unbeknownst to me, Matt had been leading in senior high for 10 years prior as the worship leader. And Colt brought me in, and Matt showed up to practice, and he said, "Hey, Colt, who's that girl on stage?" And he said, "Oh, that's our new worship leader." And so in Matt's mind, that's how I found out he had been replaced.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Alongside Podcast, which is a production of Heritage Baptist Church. The purpose of this podcast is to come alongside other followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church. I'm your host, Mike Crump, and today I'm happy to welcome Jamie Case to the podcast. Jamie is a ministry assistant in the Worship Outreach Ministries and is highly involved helping organize and lead worship here at the church. She's also married to Matt and mom to Liam, who is one of the cutest children on the face of the planet. And if you have seen him toddle around the church, you know this to be true. So, Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. This will be fun.
So what we're doing is basically just opening up to pastors, to staff, to others in the church, just to share their own testimonies, how they came to know Christ, and even just kind of a little bit of their background. So let's start there. Where did you grow up? What was family life? Were you involved in church? And how did you come to know Christ?
Well, I grew up in Central PA, right outside of State College, Penn State area in Bellefonte.
Okay.
Bellefonte, it's called Beautiful Fountain in French. So Victorian era to an extent, but I went to public school, and I did not go to church. My family, I think, my dad had a background. He has 8 brothers and sisters, and his dad died when he was 12, and so it was very church to always go to church. My mom, not so much. She had 4 brothers, and I think my grandmother was a believer to an extent, but so them coming together, they didn't go to church.
Okay.
And so it started around 4th grade. I think they all took us down the road to United Methodist Church, and we were all sprinkled. My dad didn't because he grew up in the church, so all of us at once. It was very interesting. My brother, who is 6 years older than me, at that time was maybe in 10th grade.
Oh, wow.
So, and my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, so it was very odd. But I've been going to church camp all through from 2nd grade on.
Oh, okay.
And so church camp had a Christian camp through Church of Christ, which was about 30 minutes away. And so through that, I actually was going to their youth group as well.
Okay.
And so that led to, basically that's where I heard the gospel. No offense to the United Methodist Church. They're very much about open hearts, open minds, and so they love on people, but the gospel is not shared first. I never heard the gospel to an extent. Even in messages, they'd read scripture up front and then move on.
Okay.
And so the gospel of Jesus Christ was just not prevalent or shared. It was really much about how to have a good life and do good things. And so in 6th grade, I went to church camp, as I did every year, but it was that year that I kind of had seen, I grew up in a good home. My parents are wonderful people, but Christ was not the center. God was not talked about. So at that point, I think I had started to rebel to an extent. You have that goody two shoes. You know how to follow and be good. My dad was a school teacher. My mom's an artist, and so in 6th grade, I kind of saw that. I like boys a lot, and so there's that. Just really coming to see my sin and see my need for the Lord. And then later in 8th grade, I was baptized. Later at that same Christian camp. So even coming back to my home church, saying I was baptized, kind of looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
Just because, that concept of immersion and actually making a decision for yourself, not just alongside your family. So that, I was very blessed, despite, I look at my siblings and I see they didn't have the support I did as far as the Christian community. So I just asked myself and asked the Lord, I'm like, whatever he did, he chose to allow me to be blessed that way through all the believers that I was surrounded in, even with a public school.
Yeah. So when you came to know Christ, was there something that happened or a message that just resonated with you that kind of led you to finally make that decision?
Well, Sixth grade was a while ago, but there was. I think they took us to a larger church. They bussed us out from the camp, and there was a church service and an altar call to an extent. I remember crying, and even the youth leaders saying, like, you look like you're really affected, and so talking about that, and so. But really, it was just a lot of reflection and just being challenged to accept the Lord. And so from there on out. But then there was very much a change where I knew I was walking with the Lord, and my parents would get upset at me if I was staying up too late reading the Bible and like to read, but it was very much I knew from there on I was not alone, and so which is so different. I think there's a lot of people living just alone without the comfort of the Lord and direction, and so even in sixth grade I can see that maturity growing in the Lord, and that 180 from I could have chosen this life of just ignorance.
So sixth grade, you have this transition. You are growing in the Lord. You have a hunger for the things of God. What does life look like after that? Do you have you involved in the youth group still? And are there certain leaders or key moments where you see the Lord just continuing to kind of demonstrate His work in your own life?
Yes. So I had the blessing just to be involved in 2 youth groups, one on Sunday night, my home church, Methodist Church, and then the church down the road. I would carpool with my best friend Rachel and her family in a large van, and we would go out to the Church of Christ in Howard, Pennsylvania, a little small town, every Wednesday night. And through that, I guess both youth groups, in their own way, we came to know Christ because through the Methodist Church there was different, not church camps, but different youth events. So, and also through the Church of Christ. So, but through both ways, I was impacted through that. So, as much as the gospel wasn't shared in the Methodist Church through the youth events, it was, and some more than others. So, I am so thankful for that as I continue to grow in the Lord. And there were different leaders, and specifically in the Methodist Church, there's a lot more women that step up. I will put it this way, I just don't see men leading as strongly in there, but that's also might correlate with just the gospel's not so fundamentally in their faces to challenge them. And so I was blessed. Patty Taverna was our youth leader, and she poured into us, and as well as Wes Malcaravia baptized me at the Christian church, and I think both of their teachings and encouragement, I went through like a youth leadership training thing through United Methodist Church with a bunch of other students after school, and that kind of all shaped it. There were definitely a few trying years, which just really put my faith to the test. My mom was in a very bad tractor accident alongside another man who died, and she crawled through a field and had like 12 pins put in her hips. So she healed through that, and then had appendicitis, which ruptured, and another 3. So it was just, and then my dad had cancer, and that was from 8th to 9th grade. And so seeing the Lord work and His faithfulness, even through the church and providing and sustaining us. Meanwhile, where my family, their focus wasn't on the Lord, but to be able to cling to Him and see that testament, and even through going through, I think, PCTC, Pennsylvania Christian Teen Convention, which was up in Pennsylvania. It was there I was challenged to commit my life to ministry specifically. Didn't really know what that looked like. I liked music, but it wasn't even firm at that point, and that was in 9th grade. So just seeing the Lord, challenge me to know that I want to be available to people and to pour into them, even as a woman, because in that setting, knowing even then, where do I grow? How do I, when you have these 2 different denominations, where women are free to lead and lead very strongly and unopposed, and then you have this a completely different forethought where you're like, what is scriptural based? And so learning that and just observing that, it was a blessing to be able to observe it, and just to see how can women serve in the church? How can women come alongside pastors and support them, but also in a biblical way? So that even then I was being challenged to understand that.
So you're growing, you're learning, and it's really neat to hear how the Lord is even sustaining in the midst of some very difficult times, family-wise, and just kind of being that source of strength. What brings you to Lynchburg, Virginia?
So my interest in music, funny enough, I played clarinet all through high school and middle school and elementary, I guess. But I was good, but not amazing. And so I was encouraged to audition on alto clarinet for our regional, and somehow I made it to all-state band on alto clarinet, though I had never picked it up before, and I was still squeaking through it. And so it was an amazing opportunity. I didn't get through to regional. I went to regional choir, but didn't make it. I'm really bad at auditions, really bad.
Oh, yeah.
But even to be part of that and just such the high skill of talent, I think even just that, the Lord was, impressing upon me. You don't have to be amazing, but you can still use your gifts in the church that way. And I've been leading worship at both churches in my youth group and also at my church singing. I didn't play an instrument beside clarinet, and you can't sing and play at the same time.
Now that would be a talent I would like to see right there.
And so it led to my senior year where I'm trying to figure out, what do I want to do? And someone, I think literally it was about April or March of my senior year, where someone mentioned Liberty because their daughter was down here. And we came and visited for about 4 hours.
Yeah.
My mom hated it.
Really?
Oh, she's an artist, so everything looks pretty, and down here it's industrial, and so she's like, it's not welcoming, and this and that. To her it was just so, and it looks completely different now, but then it was just warehouses, and but the only reason my dad kind of agreed on it is because we were also looking at Messiah College, and kind of a dual degree of music education and something else, and theirs would have taken 5 years, and even with state aid I would have paid more, so it really came down to my money, and my dad saw it, as far as he'd prefer for me to go to a state school, like Lock Haven, but Penn State was not enough, unless I wanted to get a degree in something different. So because I wanted to pursue worship, or we heard about the worship program, that's I think the reason my dad backed it, and my mom. So we showed up. And I applied.
And there you go.
Yep, and then they dropped me off. They didn't even stay, so it was very much I was on my own. I love my parents, but it was just, I was the first one to go to college.
So was this your first time living away from the homestead?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
How was that transition for you?
Very lonely because you don't know anyone. I mean, coming into Lynchburg, coming into college, sitting by yourself at meals, it's definitely, you get used to it. You have to kind of, this is just fine. It's not like your friend list, just building friendships, start from the ground up. And I met my best friend there. I think she was crying over her boyfriend and her breaking up. That's how we met. And it was just, it's just so beautiful to see how the Lord brings you together. Even looking back, we laugh at it because, I think when you're not desperate for friendships, but you're just open to them. So college is such a different time in which you're open to different bonds. And so I had none. It was very different. Lived in the circle. So when, wind currents would come through, the ceiling tiles would move as well. I was like, I'm paying for this. Okay. So it was definitely a different time.
Yeah. So you survived that, which is good.
It was
which
great.
is good. Wind tunnels and all. And so how did you mentioned worship was an interest in that you going into that? Did you have any plans as what do I do with this? Or in your mind, what did that look like going through the worship, or was it just kind of like I'm open to whatever, but I'm just interested in this?
So for me, I've always, I guess you could say I'm driven. I don't really make decisions lightly, but once I make them, I'm kind of stubborn and move forward with them. So even talking to people, especially up north, they're like, what's worship and music studies? What's that? What's worship leadership? What in the world? Because, we don't really have so much, we don't have large churches up there. When they came down here for my wedding, my family was like, this is huge. We were in the chapel. It's just, that is the concept of large church to them, 200 or 400 people. And so for me, I very much wanted to be a worship leader. Whatever that looked like, I knew that I wanted to be alongside a pastor in which my role could still be supported as a woman, but not ever to usurp. So there's that balance. So going into the worship program, they didn't really talk about women leading. I think it's just they didn't know how to talk about it because you had very strong feminists to an extent. So there's that balance of, it's a school still. And so going through the program, I very much, my desire was to be in the church, to serve in the church in whatever capacity. being young and not understanding, I guess, what it looked, you just don't know what it looks beyond college. But that was my goal ultimately. Okay. I wanted to be in ministry, which is so foreign to a lot of my family, and that my dad was worried about money, but Dr. Willie convinced them there's plenty of jobs and you can make money.
Yeah. So with that said, how did you end up at Heritage? That
is interesting. So there's things, there's CSER at Liberty as well as practicums. So practicums through the School of Music, Center for Worship at that time. I was looking for a church, and without a vehicle, you're on campus, so you don't, you're at the mercy of if someone wants to take you to another church. So I visited several churches. I loved Highland Heights, and I think there were at that time, Blue Ridge had a few opportunities, and then one of my friends said, "Hey, there's some opportunities at Heritage to lead worship in the youth." And so I literally just showed up, talked to Colt Johnson, and started, I guess, leading in the youth group. And it was the first time I had tried to sing and play together, so I kind of learned guitar alongside of singing. Okay. I had taken lessons and stuff, but
So you learned guitar on the fly?
On stage.
Nice.
That's
it always
singing and playing together, at least.
Okay,
that concept. It's harder than you think.
It is. I've dabbled with guitar. I used to play bass guitar, not very well.
That's right.
Tried my hand at acoustic, and it just I think I can do 3 chords. Pretty decently, but that's about it. Trying to sing and stuff like that. So it's just a wonder to me how yourself, and even just talking with Adam earlier, just how, I just started picking things up and going to town, and I'm just like, that's just
It is so different for everyone. I struggled with it. I mean, I did lessons, and I'm an A student. I was an honor, whatever, and I think I got a B in that. Yep.
Did that drive you crazy?
No, because I didn't really practice. I did, but it's just literally, I've given guitar lessons, and you see it with students as far as, hey, they make an improvement in the lesson, and the next week they're way behind, because unless you continue and grow in it and force yourself to learn, there's just different hurdles, standing up to play, singing and playing at the same time, strumming, it all comes together eventually. And so that's, I guess, definitely in senior high worship, that's where I kind of made it happen and made it work.
Yeah. And so you okay, well, let's, before we go there to student ministry, where does Matt come into all of this?
Well, we like to joke about it, but unbeknownst to me, Matt had been leading in senior high for 10 years prior as the worship leader. And Colt brought me in, and Matt showed up to practice, and he said, "Hey, Colt, who's that girl on stage?" And he said, "Oh, that's our new worship leader." And so in Matt's mind, that's how I found out he had been replaced. I think I met him, and he was wearing a Halo shirt, so I was like, oh, good. This is I can talk to this guy, as in he won't, flirt with me or hit on me or anything like that.
The gamer kid,
No worries there whatsoever. Literally no worries. He was friend zoned from the start. And then it came to, you're leading in senior high. You're a girl with a bunch of other girls, and do senior high guys sing along with you? They're not going to sing regardless. So I was like, "Hey, Matt, I heard you used to sing." And so he started leading, and we led together. And it was a funny time because we just... we're just friends. He was dating someone else. I was dating someone else. So
So you just, friendship kind of came out of that?
And then right after I graduated, we both had ended our relationships, and we kind of we call it our self-pity breakup dinner. We literally... It's so funny how the Lord kind of manipulates your heart, because you have your own set view of what your life looks like. And Matt is so my opposite, and we'll put it this way, our marriage was tough because we're so different, but yet the Lord has used Matt to grow me so much. And I guess you could probably say the other way. So that developed through that, and it was quirky, it was funny. I don't think people expected it. I didn't expect it, but I'm thankful for it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, it's interesting because, Amy and I met doing worship in college, and there is something about serving alongside one another, and kind of those friendships come out of that, and so that's fun. And of course, I love Matt to death. He cracks me up.
He was always on time, and I was always late. And he still married me.
So from there, helping in student ministries now, helping lead the praise band there, and really, What year was that? When did you start?
2010 when I started in senior high, maybe 2009.
Okay.
2010.
Okay.
End of my the fall of my senior year.
Okay. So how long did you do that? Now, at this point, are you on staff?
Nope. I came on staff in November of 2011.
Okay.
So after I already graduated, I did my internship in Kansas. I think they didn't think I was coming back.
Yeah.
Came back. Matt and I started to hang out.
Yeah.
All your friends are gone, and so you hang out.
Yeah.
And was leading in senior high. At this point, I can't remember if I guess in spring of 2010, I started serving with Pastor Dell and Clay Harvey up in the worship center.
Mm-hmm.
That was also through Colt's encouragement. I think one Sunday morning, he's like, "Hey, can you come play guitar?" I was like, "No." It's 9 a.m.? I'm not just jumping in the service. But then eventually it led to me jumping in, and that was a whole nother ballpark of crazy. But
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And now you help kind of organize some of that crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is very nice.
Yep, I came on in 2011 in the late fall, kind of as an intern. As Pastor Dell said, we'd never really done a position like this, so we'll see what happens. And then by February 2012, I was part-time working under him, as well as a little bit of praise teams or senior banquet. I think they also had it on.
Yeah.
So
Very nice.
Yeah.
So you have you've seen a lot of different areas of ministry. What do you do as far as, for those who are listening, they're like, well, what's involved in kind of the role you play now? A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of planning and organization that goes into worship and into that. But do you also play a part in the outreach ministry as well? Because you kind of serve worship and outreach. So what's it look like now?
That's under Kevin, so we cover it.
Yeah.
My title's ministry assistant, so it's
all over the place.
Sometimes, yes. We used to have hospitality, and so it consistently has changed.
You've seen a lot of transition.
I really have. I think I was the AA technically maybe for student ministries. I think they were not sad to see me go. I don't know. It's just, transitions are a beautiful thing when, God's timing is perfect. And so at this point, we oversee outreach. I do more of the administrative stuff, I guess, and we organize the food drive and coordinate with our ministries. It just changes from week to week, depending on our availability. Our primary focus, I guess you could say, like 75% of our time is worship and 25% is outreach, because our outreach ministry partners. So we support them specifically, which is sometimes the confusion as far as, is it outreach ministry, like we build ministries here? No, we support those that are already doing the work, and they're phenomenal in what they're doing. So it's awesome to come alongside those ministries, to get to know Lisa Anderson down at Parkview Community Mission and see what they're doing. It's awesome. And then Blue Ridge Pregnancy Center. It's been a blessing to come alongside that. It's one of Kevin's passions. But also to see, worship is a fundamental thing for the congregation and the body of believers. But then outside the doors, what does that look like? And to be able to use our gifts and just sharing the gospel and pouring into others, it's really a great opportunity even to see those two connect at points.
Oh, yeah. The holistic approach of worship, I think I've appreciated just with Kevin and his heart for outreach and a deeper gospel ministry than just simply let's come together and sing, which is good, and there's a blessing in that, but also moving outside the walls, for sure.
That deeper challenge.
Yeah. So what is one of your favorite things that you do?
It changes.
Yeah.
In the past, right now, we're in a huge flux with youth praise teams. I would say mentoring and pouring into younger women, and just you can use your musical gifts to bless the Lord, but and you can grow up in the youth group and use that, but it doesn't mean that means it's your career or what you're doing future-wise. So even to instill in the youth and volunteers specifically that whatever we do, we glorify the Lord, and if that's through musical giftings, but might our testimony and our walk with the Lord be seen first versus our talent. Liberty often heard, your talent can only take you so far. If as far as your spiritual walk, eventually, you'll buckle under that. And so I love youth praise teams. It's definitely been a long time in that, and right now we're in such a change, I guess, with COVID having affected so many things, and with Adam and I kind of sharing that weight. So I love to interact. I love to lead worship. And, I took a role so much in investing in mentoring for a long time. I really didn't lead so much. So I do enjoy that because ultimately I do believe the Lord gifted me in that to communicate. Am I vocally qualified? Yes or no? It depends. In what, like in the church, in a classical setting, I get nervous singing classical and all that stuff. But I know the Lord's gifted me at least to communicate His truth. And so to an extent, that is what I enjoy thoroughly, to be able to communicate through body language, through vocal, just to communicate that and to share His love and challenge the body to be more and do more, and not just to sing, but to actually engage their hearts and their minds.
I love that. Well, let me just encourage you. We always enjoy, I know me and my family personally always enjoy when you are singing, when you are sharing up there. You are gifted, and I'm just thankful for you being here and being able to share that gift. How can people be praying for you, whether personally or whether just ministry-wise? How can we be praying for you as you minister, whether it's to youth or even to the larger congregation?
I guess, life, is constantly changing, and life with Liam is so much fun, and I'm so thankful for Matt. Parenting with him and ministry with him is amazing. I think coming into Heritage was definitely, my mindset of serving in worship and youth kind of looked a little different than what is actually, everything happens at the same time here. So there's always been that struggle of, serving with my husband and ministry, and work. And so we're always constantly adapting that. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord has blessed us to be able to continue that and still, to serve together in youth, but also for him and Liam to join us, in the worships, for rehearsals and things like that. So I guess just that we would continue to honor the Lord as a married couple, but also as parents, so that we can continue to be effective in our ministry. As long as, that's, we've been married for 9 years, and our focus has been, to lay a strong foundation so that we can pour into the students, so Matt can teach the students and share God's word, and to get to lead worship alongside, and just Liam's a lot of fun, but he does need a lot of focused attention. So this past Sunday he was sick, and so we had him down in youth group, and all the youth leaders kind of held him while I led worship. And then Matt came up in senior high and started speaking. So and then I took him. So it's a balance. Especially with COVID, before when we were pregnant going into, we're like, oh, this will be fine. There's childcare. And then we come into COVID and outdoor service, and like, how in the world does this work? So it has been a blessing for childcare to open back up, to continue to be able to do ministry, but also know that my son is taken care of, and also having a lot of fun. So, and thoroughly distracted.
Yes.
Because he'll just start pulling things off the walls.
It's amazing how they can find everything,
Everything.
Everything.
He loves the stage. There's a lot of cables.
Oh, yeah? Yeah?
I have to apologize to the tech guys. So.
Well, I would echo that there is a joy in being able to serve with your spouse, even with your family at large. And I know that Liam may not be an actual, volunteer.
Oh, he loves the microphone,
but
he'll grab it.
But being able to, even me and my family, we serve together in kids ministry, and there's a great joy in that. And so I just encourage those who are listening, be in prayer for Jamie, for Matt, for little Liam, just as they continue to seek to use their giftings for the Lord, and even together as they do that. So, well, Jamie, thank you so much for kind of sharing your story and where you guys are at. I do want to get Matt. I know he and I have talked about podcasts for a long time, so I got to get him behind the microphone too. Because
that's dangerous.
I know.
Could be really dangerous. He talks. He's an introvert, but he'll talk.
Oh, I'm fully aware, and I'm sure with a lot of the upcoming Marvel movies and stuff coming out, I'm sure we would have plenty to talk about.
It's never ending.
Never. It's very true. All right, so it is time for the final question.
Oh boy.
I've got my deck of cards here with random questions, and we will see what your final question will be. Okay. Who are your heroes in real life?
Oh, that's a really great question.
Yeah. Who are your heroes in real life?
So I'm really poor on the recall sometimes, but it just depends what you look at. Wow, that is a question I haven't reflected on, because it changes with life.
Oh, yeah.
It changes from time to
different
time.
Seasons
and so different seasons right now, I'm like, who are my heroes? I don't know how to answer that. Wow. To think on that.
Would you like to be put on the spot like that?
I hate it. I think my sister did this for my bridal shower, and I wanted to cry. I think,
Yeah.
Every answer I got wrong, I had to put bubble gum in my mouth. So I got a lot wrong. I'm not great on the spot. Who are my heroes? I could say Carrie Job. Just kidding.
No, you don't.
I love Carrie, but we'll leave that to the side. That's a joke for Pastor Nathan.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, wow. Who are my heroes? I think through high school and even now, C.S. Lewis, and I loved his screw tape letters, and just, a writer, but someone who loved the Lord and even challenged, I think, for so long. I'd say probably C.S. Lewis. Just, I love to read.
Yeah.
And his writings were so profound and just challenged you spiritually and mentally. And so at least his works and what that showed.
Yeah.
And I think, there's not a lot of women in the church that you can point to, because you see a lot of pastors, but just women that follow the Lord and serve Him. Because you have, like with worship, you have the worship culture as well as, you have concert style, and then you have just charismatic. And so you have that balance of trying to find, like, who do I emulate?
Yeah.
Who do I mirror? Natalie Grant, I think to an extent, just such a powerhouse vocalist, but also just that she loves the Lord.
Yeah.
And to an extent, there's that subservience and just a respect for the Lord. So, yeah, a few of those people.
Okay.
That's not the greatest answer.
No, I think it's great. I echo your comments about C.S. Lewis for sure. I think the profound beauty, even of like his like the Chronicles of Narnia, and this had such a profound impact on my own life. And so I think Christians in the arts, I think, is something probably that is missing to some extent in our day and age.
So it's hard to really point to people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I would love to see a resurgence in modern day, is not just reproducing what the world has done, but actually getting ahead of the world in creating that beauty in that space.
Yeah. It's always a challenge to figure out, specifically as women, how do we honor the Lord and serve Him as mothers, as wives, but also as women in the church, and draw and follow that line, and really just submit, but also be strong in the Lord.
Oh yeah, plays such a profound and important role.
Yeah. I'd love to see more people step out, to be able to to have those people to follow and emulate, but I'm thankful that Christ is who we can ultimately emulate. So.
Amen. Well, Jamie, thanks again for being here, for chatting with me for a bit. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, this has been another episode of the Alongside Podcast. For more details on Alongside, including show notes, past episodes, and more, you can visit alongsidepodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you join us next time as we continue to come alongside followers of Christ in order to have thoughtful conversations about the gospel, culture, and the church.